Welcome, and gently allow your body to relax as the pace of the day slowly fades away. This is a quiet space created for rest, slow breathing, and peaceful listening. There is no rush here, no urgency, and nothing you need to remember. Only a calm and steady flow of gentle history, moving softly through time like a slow and comforting river. As you listen, you may notice your breathing becoming deeper, your muscles releasing tension, and your thoughts drifting naturally toward stillness and rest. Tonight, you will travel peacefully through the long and quiet story of the United States, from simple beginnings and everyday life to modern society and gentle progress, guided by slow narration designed to ease your mind into relaxation or sleep. You do not need to follow every detail. Simply allow the voice to become part of the background, creating a sense of comfort and calm throughout the night. If this peaceful storytelling brings you rest and comfort, your quiet support through a like, a gentle subscription, or a small comment is always appreciated. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing this calm journey to be part of your evening. Now, make yourself comfortable, lower your volume to a soothing level, and allow the story to slowly begin. Life on Roanoke Island was a delicate balance between hope and survival, and the settlers quickly learned that the new world demanded more than ambition. Each day began with the rising sun, as men labored to clear the land, build shelters, and prepare for planting crops that might sustain them through the unpredictable seasons. Women and children tended to domestic tasks, mending clothing, preparing simple meals, and assisting in the gardens, their days long and repetitive, yet vital to the colony's survival. Food was scarce, and the settlers relied heavily on fishing, gathering wild fruits, and trading cautiously with nearby Native American tribes, whose intentions were not always clear. The dense forests provided both resources and dangers, as unfamiliar wildlife and hidden swamps challenged their understanding of the land. Illness spread easily, and the lack of proper medical knowledge compounded the settlers' hardships. The psychological toll of isolation weighed heavily, with letters to England delayed for months, leaving the colonists anxious and uncertain about support from their homeland. Relationships with local tribes were a mixture of tentative friendship and suspicion. Some Native Americans offered guidance, showing which plants were edible, where fresh water could be found, and how to fish along the coast. Others viewed the newcomers with caution, uncertain whether the English meant peace or intrusion. The settlers built small wooden fortifications, hoping to protect themselves from potential hostilities, yet the structures were modest and offered little defense against storms or raids. As the months passed, the community endured both mundane struggles and extraordinary challenges, from sudden storms that threatened their crops to harsh winters that tested their endurance. Each night, the colonists would gather around small fires, sharing stories of their journey, of England left behind, and of dreams for a life in this new, uncertain land. These moments of calm, amidst constant labor and anxiety, strengthened communal bonds, and yet could not erase the ever-present uncertainty about the future. When John White returned to England for supplies, he left behind a colony that had begun to form its own rhythm of life, but also faced the looming shadow of scarcity, isolation, and unanswered questions. The settlers' resilience was remarkable, yet human fragility was evident in every struggle, every moment of doubt, and every decision made in the face of an unforgiving environment. As the island's seasons changed, from hot summers to cool autumns, each day brought new lessons, new dangers, and subtle victories, all quietly shaping the story of the lost colony, a story that would echo for centuries. As the months unfolded on Roanoke Island, every day was a test of endurance and patience, a delicate rhythm of labor and hope. The settlers faced relentless challenges, crops that failed to grow in unfamiliar soil, sudden storms that tore apart fragile shelters, and shortages of food that forced families to ration every meal. Children, too young to understand fully, observed the tension and contributed as best they could, fetching water from distant streams and helping gather firewood, their small hands learning the weight of survival. Evenings were long and quiet, with the distant sound of waves mingling with the murmurs of exhausted settlers, each lost in thought about the past and the uncertain future. The island itself seemed alive, both a provider and a threat. Dense forests hid game and fresh water but also concealed venomous snakes and wild animals that could strike without warning. The coastline offered fish and shellfish, yet treacherous tides and hidden currents claimed tools and lives alike. Relations with Native American tribes were cautiously maintained, some evenings, the colonists shared meals and knowledge, learning which plants were safe to eat and how to navigate the swamps, while other encounters reminded them that trust was fragile, and hostility could erupt without notice. The settlers' social structure grew as they adapted to this harsh new world. Leaders emerged naturally, assigning tasks, resolving disputes, and attempting to maintain morale, though fear and exhaustion often overshadowed authority. Personal stories of bravery, small acts of kindness, and quiet despair wove together into the fabric of daily life. Marriages were tested by stress, parents worried endlessly for their children, and friendships formed quickly yet were constantly under strain. Letters sent to England promised news of survival and hope for aid, yet the months-long wait for responses intensified anxiety, leaving colonists to rely solely on each other and the meager resources of the land. Through all this, there were moments of unexpected beauty: sunrises over the water, the quiet rustle of leaves in the forest, and the simple satisfaction of a harvest, however small, offered brief reprieve from relentless struggle. The colonists became intimately attuned to the rhythm of Roanoke Island, learning to read the weather, to find sustenance where none seemed possible, and to endure the silence of a land far from home. Every challenge, every success, every quiet night beneath the stars, slowly shaped the colony's identity and resilience, leaving behind traces of human courage and the shadow of an unresolved mystery that would linger long after the island fell silent. By the time John White returned from England in 1590, 3 long years had passed, and the once bustling colony was eerily silent. The houses were intact but abandoned, crops had been left untended, and there was no sign of the families who had arrived with hope and determination. On one wooden post, the single word, Croton, was carved, the only clue to the fate of the settlers, yet it offered more questions than answers. Was it a message indicating they had moved to Croton Island nearby, seeking refuge with allied Native Americans, or a cryptic sign of something more tragic? The absence of signs of violence suggested they had not perished in conflict, yet the silence of the island spoke of hardships endured, of lives uprooted and vanished without a trace. The mystery gripped England and generations of historians, fueling speculation, voyages, and investigations. Some believed the colonists integrated with local tribes, gradually losing their English identity, while others feared starvation, disease, or migration inland led to their disappearance. Archaeological digs over the centuries have revealed fragments of tools, pottery, and remnants of daily life, hinting at survival in some form, yet the complete story remains hidden. The psychological impact of the disappearance was profound. The unknown fate of the colonists weighed heavily on the imagination, inspiring poems, letters, and legends that whispered of courage, folly, and the limits of human endurance. Roanoke Island became a symbol not just of ambition and colonization, but also of uncertainty and the fragility of life in a new and unforgiving land. Each artifact, each clue, each interpretation tells part of the story but never the whole, leaving modern listeners to wonder what became of those who dared to dream beyond the horizon. Over time, the tale evolved, blending historical fact with legend, yet its essence remained unchanged: a group of people seeking a new life, whose lives were consumed by the challenges of survival, leaving behind only questions and the haunting beauty of an unsolved mystery. The Lost Colony reminds us of human vulnerability, the passage of time, and the enduring pull of history, where even the smallest clue, carved into wood, can echo through centuries and captivate minds across generations. In reflecting on Roanoke, one cannot help but sense the quiet persistence of hope, the subtle triumphs of daily life, and the lingering uncertainty that defines the human experience when confronted with nature, isolation, and the unknown. In the winter of 1692, the small Puritan village of Salem in Massachusetts became the center of fear, suspicion, and tragic events that would forever mark American history. Life in Salem was quiet and orderly, structured around religious devotion, community expectations, and the daily rhythms of farming and domestic life. The villagers, bound by strict moral codes, lived in constant awareness of sin, the supernatural, and the presence of God in all aspects of their world. It was a society in which every action, every word, and every glance could carry weight beyond measure. The first whispers of witchcraft began with the strange behavior of a few young girls, whose fits, contortions, and unexplained ailments puzzled the community. Their symptoms were frightening and mysterious, leaving neighbors and family members desperate for explanation. As fear spread, accusations multiplied, and suspicion permeated the town like a quiet, chilling wind. Those accused of witchcraft faced intense scrutiny, public humiliation, and harsh interrogations. The Puritan ministers and magistrates sought evidence in scripture and confession, relying on spectral sightings, dreams, and testimonies that often contradicted one another. The accused, mostly women but also some men, were forced to defend themselves against invisible forces, superstition, and the collective anxiety of their neighbors. The psychological toll was immense, as fear of accusation could destroy reputations, divide families, and turn friends into enemies. Despite the chaos, daily life continued in small ways. Families still tended to farms, prepared meals, and attended church, yet the undercurrent of fear colored every interaction. The trials escalated, and the court proceedings became spectacles of accusation and defense, fueled by the villagers' fervent belief in the devil's presence among them. Panic and suspicion intertwined, leaving little room for reason, while children, the elderly, and even respected members of the community found themselves drawn into the web of fear. Each conviction, each accusation, each trembling confession contributed to a growing sense of despair and helplessness. As the months passed, the Salem witch trials claimed the lives of many, while leaving behind a community scarred by fear, loss, and the weight of moral certainty turned against human compassion. The story of Salem is a quiet meditation on human nature, belief, and the consequences of fear, a reflection of how societies can unravel when superstition and suspicion overpower reason. Even centuries later, the tale lingers, a chilling reminder of the fragility of social trust and the subtle, enduring power of fear in shaping human behavior. Every whispered accusation, every careful glance, every trial heard in the still air of Salem echoes through history, offering lessons in caution, empathy, and the quiet strength required to resist the tides of collective panic. As the weeks and months progressed in Salem, the initial strange behaviors of a few girls expanded into a wave of accusations that swept through the village with unstoppable force. Neighbors accused neighbors, often over minor disputes, jealousies, or long-standing resentments, and the once tight-knit community began to unravel under the weight of suspicion. Key figures emerged during this period, such as Reverend Samuel Parris, whose sermons fanned the flames of fear, and Abigail Williams, one of the young girls whose fits and testimonies ignited much of the panic. Each accusation carried profound consequences. Those accused were imprisoned, subjected to grueling interrogations, and often forced to confess or name others in hopes of saving themselves. The court relied heavily on spectral evidence, testimony that the spirit or specter of the accused had appeared to the afflicted, a practice that allowed fear and imagination to dictate justice. Everyday life in Salem was overshadowed by anxiety, as families worried for their loved ones, and neighbors whispered cautiously, unsure who might be next. Simple tasks, such as tending to crops or preparing meals, were carried out under the shadow of potential accusation, and the village itself seemed to vibrate with tension. The accused endured intense psychological torment, isolated in cold, dark jails, their reputations destroyed even before any verdicts were rendered. Trials became public events, attended by curious townspeople, each hanging on the words of the afflicted girls and the ministers who interpreted signs of the devil's work. Amidst this turmoil, some villagers sought to intervene, questioning the legitimacy of the accusations and pleading for rationality, yet their voices were often drowned out by the growing hysteria. Over time, fear began to mutate into desperation, as more individuals were implicated and executed, and the village struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy. By the end of the trials, 20 people had been executed, dozens more imprisoned, and countless families left fractured, their lives forever changed by the events of that dark year. The Salem witch trials endure as a haunting testament to the dangers of mass hysteria, the fragility of social trust, and the human capacity for fear to eclipse reason. Today, historians study these events not only for their tragic outcomes but for the lessons they impart about justice, morality, and the complex dynamics of belief and power. The story lingers, a quiet, unsettling echo of human vulnerability, and a reminder of how quickly order can unravel when fear goes unchecked, leaving a legacy that continues to captivate, caution, and mesmerize those who encounter it. After the height of the Salem witch trials, the village slowly began to confront the consequences of its actions. Families mourned those who had been executed, imprisoned, or forced into exile, while the community struggled to reconcile faith, fear, and reason. Survivors and witnesses reflected on the tragic events, writing letters, accounts, and sermons that attempted to explain how suspicion had overtaken judgment and how fear had been allowed to dictate the course of justice. Reparations were eventually made for some of the accused, and the colony's leaders faced criticism and censure, yet the emotional scars remained for generations. The story of Salem became a quiet cautionary tale, a reminder of how societies can unravel when fear replaces understanding and how easily human nature can be manipulated by superstition and collective anxiety. In the decades that followed, historians and writers revisited the events, examining the social, religious, and psychological factors that had fueled the hysteria, and slowly, the village's story became part of a larger reflection on morality, governance, and the importance of evidence over assumption. Today, visitors to Salem walk the streets with an awareness of the past, sensing the tension and tragedy that once filled the town, while scholars continue to study trial records, personal accounts, and artifacts to piece together the lives and experiences of those affected. The legacy of the Salem witch trials endures not only as a historical event but as a meditation on human vulnerability, the dangers of conformity and fear, and the enduring need for justice tempered with compassion. Each whispered story, every documented testimony, every reflection upon the trials, adds depth to the narrative, ensuring that even centuries later, the lessons of Salem remain relevant, resonant, and quietly powerful. Through this reflection, listeners and readers alike are reminded of the fragility of social trust, the subtle ways fear can influence behavior, and the enduring importance of empathy, reason, and awareness in the face of uncertainty. The Salem witch trials, once a dark chapter of suspicion and sorrow, now stands as a timeless story, told slowly, deliberately, and with careful attention to detail, allowing the mind to wander through history, ponder human nature, and experience the quiet power of a society forever changed by fear. In the spring of 1607, a group of English settlers arrived on the shores of what is now Virginia, seeking a new life and the promise of wealth and opportunity in the Americas. They founded Jamestown, the first permanent English settlement in North America, a place where hope and uncertainty intertwined with every step on unfamiliar soil. The settlers arrived on the banks of the James River, encountering dense forests, marshy lands, and the distant presence of Native American tribes who had lived in the region for generations. Life began with immediate challenges. Constructing shelters, finding fresh water, and establishing food sources were daily struggles, as the land was both beautiful and unforgiving. The settlers faced harsh weather, unfamiliar terrain, and limited knowledge of how to cultivate crops in the new environment. Tensions grew within the colony as disagreements over leadership, priorities, and survival strategies emerged, testing the resilience and patience of the community. Every day was a balance of labor and anticipation, as men, women, and children worked together to clear land, build houses, and secure provisions for the uncertain future. Relationships with the local Powhatan Confederacy were complex, marked by both cautious trade and underlying tension, as the English sought guidance in farming and survival while also asserting their own presence. Illness, hunger, and the threat of conflict were constant companions, and the colonists learned quickly that the new world required ingenuity, endurance, and a willingness to adapt. Even in these difficult circumstances, moments of camaraderie, small victories, and the simple act of a meal or a safe night's rest provided brief relief from the relentless challenges of settlement. Over time, the settlers began to understand the rhythm of the land, the seasonal changes, and the delicate balance between human effort and the forces of nature. Jamestown became not just a location but a symbol of ambition, risk, and the fragile beginnings of English colonization in America. Each day, the colonists' experiences wove together into a quiet, persistent narrative of hope, struggle, and the human desire to create a new life far from the familiar shores of England. Life in Jamestown during the early years was a constant struggle against hunger, disease, and the harsh realities of the New World. The settlers, unaccustomed to the climate and the land, often found their crops failing, their food supplies dwindling, and their health deteriorating under the weight of malnutrition and unfamiliar illnesses. Every morning began with the tasks of tending to gardens, repairing shelters, and searching for reliable sources of fresh water, while afternoons were consumed by laborious efforts to hunt, fish, or forage for anything edible in the surrounding forests. The colonists relied on the guidance of the Powhatan tribes, who taught them which plants were safe to eat, how to fish in the river, and how to navigate the dense woodlands, yet trust was always tentative and fraught with caution. Misunderstandings and cultural differences occasionally led to tension and conflict, reminding the settlers that survival depended not only on physical labor but also on careful diplomacy and respect. Illness and disease spread quickly, with dysentery, malaria, and other ailments claiming lives at an alarming rate, further testing the endurance of the colonists and the cohesion of the small community. Social dynamics within Jamestown were also delicate. Leaders struggled to maintain order, assign responsibilities, and ensure cooperation among men and women who were weary, fearful, and often frustrated by the relentless challenges of settlement. Despite these hardships, moments of human connection, shared meals, collaborative efforts to build homes, or quiet evenings around the fire, offered small reprieves, strengthening bonds and allowing hope to persist even in the face of adversity. Over time, the settlers adapted to the rhythm of the land, learning to anticipate seasonal changes, cultivate more reliable crops, and manage relations with their neighbors, both English and native. The story of Jamestown, in these early years, is a testament to endurance, resilience, and the fragile balance between human ambition and the demands of an unfamiliar world. Each day, each hardship, each small triumph contributed to the slow, ongoing narrative of survival and settlement, capturing the quiet, relentless pulse of life at the edge of the known world. By the winter of 1609 to 1610, Jamestown faced what would later be called the starving time, a period of extreme hardship that tested the limits of human endurance and survival. Food supplies ran dangerously low, and harsh weather made farming nearly impossible, leaving the settlers vulnerable to hunger and disease. Each day became a struggle to find sustenance, with colonists forced to ration meager rations, forage for roots, and rely on whatever resources the surrounding land and river could provide. The harsh conditions led to internal tensions, as frustration, fear, and despair created conflicts over leadership, resources, and strategies for survival. Governor Sir Thomas Gates, along with other leaders, attempted to maintain order, but the relentless pressure of starvation, illness, and isolation made governance precarious and human patience thin. Relations with the Powhatan tribes, which had been tense and cautious, became even more critical, as the settlers relied on trade and the guidance of the native people to survive, yet misunderstandings and distrust complicated these interactions. Deaths were frequent, and the psychological toll on survivors was immense, with despair and anxiety shadowing each moment. Even in this darkness, acts of resilience emerged. Settlers shared what little they had, worked together to fortify their homes, and maintained small rituals of faith and hope, which offered solace amid the daily struggle. When spring arrived, the colony slowly began to recover, aided by the arrival of new supplies, fresh settlers, and renewed determination. The hardships of the starving time left an indelible mark on Jamestown, shaping the settlers' identity, forging a cautious respect for the land, and teaching lessons in endurance, cooperation, and adaptation that would influence the colony's future. The story of Jamestown's early years, from hopeful beginnings to desperate survival, illustrates the fragile line between success and disaster in the New World, and the quiet, relentless perseverance required to transform a perilous settlement into the foundation of enduring colonization. Each challenge, each small victory, and each human story during this time contributed to a continuous narrative of endurance, shaping the character of the colony and leaving echoes that resonate in history, reminding us of the perseverance and vulnerability inherent in the earliest chapters of America's story. After the harrowing years of scarcity and struggle, Jamestown began to stabilize as settlers adapted to the New World and learned to harness its resources more effectively. One of the most significant developments was the introduction of tobacco cultivation by John Rolfe, whose careful experimentation created a profitable cash crop that would sustain the colony economically and provide a foundation for trade with England. The cultivation of tobacco brought a new rhythm to daily life. Fields were planted, tended, and harvested with meticulous care, giving structure to the settlers' labor and a renewed sense of purpose. Social structures within the colony became more organized, as leaders like Governor Thomas Dale enforced rules, distributed land, and encouraged cooperation to ensure that the settlement could survive and thrive. Relations with the Powhatan Confederacy, while still delicate and occasionally tense, were managed through trade, negotiation, and strategic alliances, allowing the colony to acquire food, guidance, and support that supplemented their agricultural efforts. Over time, families established more permanent homes, children grew familiar with the landscape, and settlers developed a deeper understanding of the seasonal cycles, weather patterns, and local ecology that shaped their existence. The hardships of the past lent a quiet resilience to the community, as the survivors of the starving time drew on their experiences to guide newcomers, teach essential skills, and build a shared sense of identity rooted in endurance and adaptation. Jamestown's growth was gradual, yet steady. Small improvements in agriculture, infrastructure, and governance created the conditions for a settlement that, though still vulnerable, had a future shaped by both human effort and the lessons of adversity. The story of Jamestown, from tentative beginnings through crisis and toward stability, illustrates the enduring tension between ambition and environment, fear and hope, and the ways in which human determination can transform even the most challenging circumstances into a legacy of survival. Each day, each harvest, each cautious negotiation with the surrounding tribes, contributed to the continuous narrative of a colony learning, adapting, and slowly carving out its place in the vast and uncertain landscape of the New World, a story that continues to captivate, reflect, and teach generations about resilience, perseverance, and the slow, patient work of building a lasting community. As Jamestown continued to grow and stabilize, its story became more than a tale of survival. It became a reflection on human endurance, adaptation, and the complex dynamics of early American colonization. The lessons learned by the settlers, how to cultivate the land, navigate relationships with Native Americans, and maintain community in the face of adversity, shaped not only the colony itself but the foundation of English settlement in North America. The hardships of the early years, from disease and hunger to internal conflict and environmental challenges, left an indelible mark on the character of the colony, teaching resilience, patience, and the importance of cooperation. Over time, Jamestown evolved into a thriving settlement, its economy supported by tobacco, its population sustained through careful management of resources and relationships, and its legacy preserved in historical records, artifacts, and accounts of the people who endured its trials. Historians look back on Jamestown not only as the first permanent English settlement but as a story of human ambition meeting the unforgiving reality of nature, of cultural encounters and misunderstandings, and of the quiet persistence required to build a lasting community. Every detail, every struggle, every cautious triumph contributes to a continuous narrative of perseverance, reminding us that history is shaped as much by ordinary daily acts of endurance as by extraordinary events. The story of Jamestown invites reflection on courage, adaptability, and the enduring human desire to create and sustain life in unfamiliar and challenging circumstances. Even centuries later, the colony's experiences echo through time, offering lessons in patience, resilience, and the subtle interplay of risk, hope, and human ingenuity. The legacy of Jamestown, like the rivers and forests surrounding it, flows quietly through history, a testament to the people who lived, struggled, and persevered, leaving behind a narrative that continues to captivate, instruct, and inspire those who seek to understand the origins of America and the enduring spirit of its earliest settlers. In 1804, President Thomas Jefferson commissioned two men, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, to embark on an ambitious expedition to explore the vast lands west of the Mississippi River. The goal was to map the territory, establish relations with Native American tribes, and gather scientific knowledge about the plants, animals, and geography of the uncharted region. The journey began at Camp Du Bois, near the Missouri River, where the expedition team, known as the Corps of Discovery, prepared meticulously for months, gathering supplies, equipment, and knowledge that would sustain them through years of travel. From the very beginning, the expedition faced the realities of the wilderness, unpredictable weather, dense forests, swift rivers, and the constant challenge of navigating unknown terrain. Every day was a balance of caution, observation, and endurance, as the men rode, hiked, and camped along the riverbanks, learning to read the land and adapt to the rhythms of nature. Encounters with Native American tribes were both delicate and essential, requiring diplomacy, respect, and careful communication, as Lewis and Clark sought guidance, established alliances, and recorded cultural practices and languages. The expedition's scientific mission intertwined with survival, as observations of wildlife, plant life, and geography informed not only maps but also the understanding of the natural world and the resources available for future settlers. The men maintained detailed journals, documenting every day's progress, hardships, discoveries, and encounters, creating a continuous record of exploration that would become invaluable to the nation. Nights were spent in campsites by the river, under the vast sky, with quiet reflections on the journey, the unknown lands ahead, and the delicate balance between human curiosity and the dangers of the wilderness. The Lewis and Clark expedition was not merely a voyage across land, it was a careful, measured engagement with the challenges of exploration, the endurance of the human spirit, and the uncharted landscapes of a continent poised for discovery. Each day, each interaction, each careful observation contributed to a narrative of exploration, patience, and discovery that would resonate for generations and remain a cornerstone of America's history of westward expansion. As Lewis and Clark and the core of Discovery moved further west, each day brought new challenges and discoveries, shaping the expedition's slow and deliberate rhythm. The men navigated rivers that twisted unpredictably, portaged around waterfalls, and crossed plains and forests that seemed endless and unfamiliar. Hunting and fishing became vital for survival, providing fresh meat and sustenance, while careful attention to maps, compasses, and natural landmarks ensured they remained on course. Encounters with Native American tribes were central to the journey, requiring tact, diplomacy, and mutual respect. The expedition often traded goods, shared meals, and exchanged information about the land, its resources, and its dangers. These interactions, while sometimes tense, allowed Lewis and Clark to learn about the geography, climate, and social structures of the tribes, recording details that would later prove invaluable for both diplomacy and scientific knowledge. Meanwhile, the team documented countless new species of plants and animals, carefully sketching and noting their observations, contributing to the growing scientific understanding of the continent. Weather, however, was an unpredictable adversary, with sudden storms, floods, and scorching heat challenging their endurance and testing both physical and mental resilience. Every night, the explorers set up camp, tending to their equipment, recording journal entries, and reflecting on the day's progress. Even in moments of exhaustion or uncertainty, they maintained a steady determination, knowing that each careful step forward was a contribution to knowledge, exploration, and the promise of expansion. The expedition's pace was deliberate, a blend of exploration, survival, and observation, where the quiet rhythm of the river, the rustle of forests, and the distant calls of wildlife became a constant backdrop to the human endeavor unfolding along its banks. Through this slow, meticulous approach, Lewis and Clark not only mapped the land but also built a continuous narrative of courage, curiosity, and endurance, a story that would inspire generations and provide a detailed window into the uncharted American West. As the expedition reached the base of the Rocky Mountains, the journey became markedly more difficult, testing the endurance, skill, and patience of Lewis, Clark, and the core of Discovery. Steep trails, narrow passes, and treacherous rivers challenged every step, requiring careful planning and coordination to transport men, supplies, and boats across unforgiving terrain. The air grew thinner, the weather colder, and the river swifter, forcing the explorers to rely on both their preparation and their instincts to navigate safely. Along the way, they encountered new species of plants, trees, and wildlife previously undocumented, taking careful notes, sketches, and observations, blending survival with scientific exploration. Encounters with Native American tribes in the mountains became essential for guidance, food, and information about the land, as the explorers learned the terrain, weather patterns, and safe routes through areas unknown to them. The hardships were relentless: frostbite, exhaustion, scarcity of food, and the constant need to repair and carry equipment threatened both morale and physical well-being. Yet, the perseverance of the team never wavered, each member contributing to the effort through skill, determination, and cooperation. Every night, as they camped under star-filled skies, The men recorded the day's discoveries, reflected on challenges overcome, and planned for the uncertain path ahead, blending careful observation with personal reflection. Through mountains and valleys, rivers and plains, the expedition created a detailed, continuous record of geography, culture, and natural history, forming the foundation of understanding for the vast, untamed West. Each step, each discovery, each challenge met with resolve contributed to a narrative of exploration that emphasized endurance, collaboration, and the human desire to understand the unknown. The crossing of the Rockies stands as one of the expedition's defining moments, demonstrating not only courage and ingenuity but also the slow, meticulous process of learning, adapting, and recording a world previously unseen by European eyes, ensuring that the story of Lewis and Clark remained a testament to exploration, patience, and the quiet perseverance of human endeavor. After weeks of grueling travel through mountains, rivers, and plains, Lewis and Clark finally reached the Pacific Ocean in late 1805, a moment that marked the culmination of their careful, deliberate journey across an immense and previously uncharted land. The sight of the vast ocean, stretching endlessly toward the horizon, brought both relief and awe, a quiet acknowledgement of the perseverance, courage, and teamwork that had carried them across thousands of miles. The expedition took time to document their observations of the coastline, the tides, local flora and fauna, and the interactions with coastal Native American tribes, carefully recording knowledge that would inform future explorers and settlers. Even as they marveled at the landscape and the achievement of reaching the Pacific, the team knew their work was not complete. The return journey awaited, requiring the same meticulous attention to routes, supplies, and survival. Along the way back, they retraced their steps, refined maps, and strengthened relationships with tribes, sharing gifts, knowledge, and diplomacy to ensure safe passage. The return voyage tested their endurance once again, as harsh weather, difficult terrain, and the constant need for resources reminded them of the fragility of life in the wilderness. Yet, the core of discovery maintained the same steady determination, documenting every river bend, mountain pass, and cultural encounter, preserving a continuous record of the land, its people, and its natural wonders. When Lewis, Clark, and their team finally returned to St. Louis in 1806, they were celebrated for their achievement, having opened the West to future exploration, trade, and settlement. Their journals, sketches, and reports became invaluable resources for understanding the geography, ecology, and human cultures of the continent, providing a detailed and measured narrative of exploration that would inspire generations. The story of the Lewis and Clark expedition is not only one of physical endurance and discovery but also of careful observation, patience, and the quiet triumph of human curiosity over uncertainty. Each mile traveled, each challenge overcome, and each insight recorded contributed to a continuous historical narrative, offering lessons in resilience, collaboration, and the profound rewards of thoughtful exploration. The legacy of the expedition endures as a testament to human perseverance, the importance of preparation, and the enduring allure of the unknown, a story that unfolds slowly, deliberately, and with attention to detail, capturing the imagination of anyone who seeks to follow the path of discovery across the vast and beautiful landscapes of early America. In the early 19th century, the United States faced the challenge of connecting its growing interior settlements with the Atlantic coast, a task complicated by mountains, rivers, and vast stretches of land. Among the solutions envisioned, the Erie Canal stood out as a bold and transformative project, designed to link the Hudson River in New York to the Great Lakes, facilitating trade, migration, and economic growth. Construction began in 1817, an endeavor that would take nearly a decade to complete, involving thousands of laborers, engineers, and visionaries who worked tirelessly to turn plans into reality. The project required ingenuity, persistence, and careful coordination, as workers dug channels, built locks, and cleared forests, often relying on hand tools and rudimentary equipment in conditions that were physically demanding and occasionally dangerous. Every day, laborers faced unpredictable weather, from sweltering summer heat to freezing winter temperatures, yet they persevered, driven by the promise of transforming the landscape and connecting communities across the state. The canal passed through diverse terrain, including swamps, rivers, hills, and forests, each presenting unique challenges that required creative solutions and careful planning. The work was slow and methodical, as mistakes could be costly, yet the collective effort gradually carved a waterway through the heart of New York, linking towns, rivers, and distant settlements. Beyond the physical labor, the Erie Canal represented a social and economic experiment, as communities along its route anticipated the changes it would bring: new trade opportunities, faster transportation of goods, and the movement of people and ideas. As construction progressed, small settlements transformed into bustling towns, and the rhythm of daily life adapted to the canal's presence, with workers, merchants, and travelers contributing to the evolving social landscape. The Erie Canal became not merely a man-made waterway but a symbol of American ambition, innovation, and determination, a testament to what careful planning, collaboration, and persistent effort could achieve. Each mile of canal, each lock constructed, each worker's effort contributed to a continuous narrative of human endeavor, illustrating the slow, deliberate process of shaping the land to meet the needs of an expanding nation. The story of the Erie Canal, from conception to completion, reflects the interplay of vision, labor, and perseverance, offering a quiet meditation on the transformative power of infrastructure, the endurance of those who built it, and the subtle, lasting impact of human ingenuity on the natural world. Life along the Erie Canal during its construction was marked by relentless labor, endurance, and the small victories that came from each day's work. Workers, often recruited from local farms, immigrant communities, and even laboring families, faced physically demanding tasks: digging, lifting, and clearing earth with simple tools like shovels, pickaxes, and wheelbarrows. Sweltering heat in summer, biting cold in winter, and sudden rainstorms made progress difficult, yet the rhythm of labor continued, day after day, as the vision of a connected waterway drove perseverance. Camps and temporary settlements sprang up along the route, creating small communities where workers lived, shared meals, and supported one another through exhaustion, injury, and illness. The construction required not only physical strength but also ingenuity and coordination, as locks, bridges, and aqueducts were engineered to manage water flow and connect rivers and lakes across varied terrain. Communication among crews was essential, and every decision, every measurement, and every adjustment could determine whether progress continued smoothly or setbacks occurred. Beyond the labor itself, the canal began to influence the surrounding towns, transforming them economically and socially. Local merchants, farmers, and artisans anticipated the increased trade, while travelers and settlers followed the developing waterway, bringing new ideas, goods, and opportunities. The Erie Canal became a lifeline, linking distant regions, creating economic corridors, and fostering a sense of connection and progress throughout New York State. Each day of construction, each carefully dug channel, and each small engineering triumph contributed to a continuous story of human determination, resilience, and collaboration. The canal workers' efforts were slow and methodical, yet cumulatively transformative, reshaping both the landscape and the communities it touched. In reflecting on this period, one sees not only the physical challenges overcome but also the quiet persistence, ingenuity, and collective endeavor that defined one of the most significant infrastructure projects in early American history. The Erie Canal stands as a testament to patience, perseverance, and the subtle yet profound ways in which human labor can reshape the world, linking people, commerce, and communities in ways that endure for centuries. By 1825, after nearly a decade of labor, the Erie Canal was completed, a monumental achievement that transformed transportation, commerce, and daily life in New York and beyond. The waterway stretched over 360 miles, linking the Hudson River to Lake Erie, allowing goods, crops, and people to move more efficiently than ever before. Towns along the canal flourished, as merchants, farmers, and artisans took advantage of new trade opportunities, creating a vibrant network of economic activity that spread wealth and innovation throughout the region. The canal lowered transportation costs dramatically, encouraged migration, and fostered communication and cultural exchange between distant communities, reshaping the social and economic landscape of the young United States. Beyond immediate commerce, the Erie Canal became a symbol of American ingenuity, determination, and the ability of collective human effort to overcome natural obstacles. Its construction demonstrated the power of planning, cooperation, and persistence, offering lessons in problem-solving, engineering, and community organization that would influence future infrastructure projects across the nation. The legacy of the Erie Canal endures in its impact on settlement patterns, urban growth, and the shaping of the American economy, leaving a continuous narrative of transformation, adaptation, and progress. Each lock built, each mile of channel dug, and each laborer's effort contributed to a story that extends far beyond the physical waterway, illustrating how careful, deliberate work can create lasting change. Even centuries later, the Erie Canal serves as a quiet reminder of the vision, labor, and resilience that turned a bold idea into a lasting reality, connecting communities, enabling growth, and leaving an indelible mark on the history and development of the United States. The Erie Canal stands not merely as a feat of engineering, but as a testament to human determination, patience, and the enduring power of vision carried forward through collective effort and perseverance. In 1848, news spread across the United States of a remarkable discovery in the hills of Northern California. Gold had been found at Sutter's Mill, near Coloma. What began as a small, local excitement quickly became a nationwide phenomenon, as men, women, and families from distant states and even foreign lands set out on long, arduous journeys in hopes of striking it rich. The gold rush transformed California from a quiet frontier region into a bustling destination of opportunity, risk, and dreams. Travel to California was grueling and unpredictable, whether by ship around the tip of South America, across the Isthmus of Panama, or overland along trails that stretched hundreds of miles. Every step of the journey was marked by fatigue, danger, and anticipation, as travelers navigated rivers, mountains, deserts, and uncertain terrain. Upon arrival, prospectors faced the challenges of finding gold, often working long days along streams and riverbeds, panning and digging, hoping for a glimmer of fortune amidst the soil and gravel. Camps and small towns quickly sprang up around mining sites, creating a temporary yet vibrant community of adventurers, laborers, and entrepreneurs, each contributing to the rhythm of daily life amid uncertainty and hope. Despite the promise of wealth, life during the gold rush was harsh and unpredictable. Disease, poor sanitation, exposure to the elements, and the constant struggle for survival were daily realities, and many left the mines empty-handed, having invested months or years of effort with little to show. Relations among miners were a delicate balance of cooperation and competition, as claims had to be negotiated, and disputes resolved, while newcomers learned from more experienced prospectors the techniques, tools, and strategies that might increase their chances of success. Even in moments of disappointment and struggle, the excitement, camaraderie, and relentless pursuit of opportunity created a unique, almost hypnotic energy that shaped life during this period. The California Gold Rush was more than a search for precious metal. It was a story of human ambition, resilience, and the ways in which hope can drive people to endure extreme hardship. Each day of labor, each mile traveled, and each small discovery contributed to a continuous narrative of determination, adventure, and the pursuit of a dream, leaving an enduring legacy on the landscape, the economy, and the society of California and the nation at large. Life in the goldfields of California was exhausting, unpredictable, and full of small victories and constant frustrations. Miners worked long days, often from sunrise to sunset, panning rivers, digging shafts, and washing gravel in search of even a few flecks of gold. The work was physically demanding, with cold water, heavy rocks, and harsh sun testing endurance, while the ever-present threat of injury or illness added to the tension. Makeshift camps and boomtowns sprang up near mining sites, where wooden shacks, tents, and quickly constructed stores created temporary communities. In these towns, merchants, blacksmiths, and innkeepers catered to the miners, selling supplies, tools, and food, often at inflated prices due to high demand and scarce resources. Social life was a mixture of camaraderie and competition, as miners shared information, labor, and sometimes meals, while also guarding claims, negotiating rights, and occasionally clashing over disputes. Law enforcement was minimal or improvised, leaving communities to develop their own rules, traditions, and ways to resolve conflicts, which sometimes led to vigilantism or public confrontations. Women, though fewer in number, contributed significantly, running boarding houses, shops, and services that sustained miners, while families tried to maintain routines and stability in the midst of chaos and uncertainty. Disease, poor sanitation, and harsh living conditions were constant challenges, making survival as important as striking gold itself. Despite these hardships, the gold rush created a sense of relentless energy, hope, and ambition, with every small discovery sparking excitement and drawing more settlers to the region. The daily rhythm of mining, trading, and community life, combined with the drama of success and failure, wove together a narrative of endurance, aspiration, and the human desire to seek opportunity against all odds. Each day, each claim, each small fortune, and each setback contributed to a continuous story of transformation, not only for the individuals involved but for California itself, shaping the economy, population, and society in ways that would echo for generations. The gold rush stands as a testament to ambition, perseverance, and the profound ways that hope and human effort can reshape both land and lives. By the mid-1850s, the initial frenzy of the California gold rush began to decline, as the easily accessible gold deposits were depleted and mining became increasingly difficult and technical. Prospectors who had traveled from across the United States and around the world faced disappointment, exhaustion, and sometimes financial ruin, yet the region had been forever transformed. Boomtowns that had once teemed with hopeful miners either evolved into permanent cities or were abandoned, leaving behind streets, buildings, and stories that reflected both ambition and impermanence. The gold rush spurred massive migration, drawing people from diverse backgrounds, cultures, and nations, creating a unique social fabric marked by opportunity, conflict, and adaptation. Native American populations were profoundly affected, facing displacement, disease, and disruption of traditional lands and ways of life as settlers expanded into territories in pursuit of gold. Agriculture, trade, and industry also grew to support the influx of people, reshaping California's economy and laying the foundations for future growth, infrastructure, and urbanization. The environmental impact of mining, from altered riverbeds to deforested hills, left a lasting mark on the landscape, a quiet reminder of the costs of rapid human expansion. Despite the hardships, the gold rush's legacy endures as a story of human ambition, resilience, and the enduring quest for opportunity, illustrating how hope, labor, and determination can reshape societies and landscapes alike. Each journey, each claim, each small discovery and setback contributed to a continuous historical narrative, highlighting the interplay of courage, ingenuity, and consequence. Today, the California Gold Rush is remembered not only for its tales of wealth and adventure but also for its transformative effect on migration, economy, and society, offering lessons in perseverance, adaptation, and the complex human relationship with both opportunity and the natural world. It stands as a quiet testament to the enduring spirit of exploration, the risks of ambition, and the profound ways in which determined people can leave a lasting imprint on history. In the 1830s, the United States government implemented a policy that would forcibly remove thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands in the southeastern states, an event that came to be known as the Trail of Tears. The removal affected tribes including the Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole, each of whom had lived on these lands for generations, cultivating farms, building communities, and maintaining cultural traditions. The government's motivation, driven by the desire for land, resources, and expansion, ignored treaties, sovereignty, and the deep attachment of these peoples to their homelands. Preparations for relocation involved gathering families, livestock, and belongings, yet conditions were chaotic, resources were scarce, and the journey ahead was uncertain and treacherous. As the groups began their forced marches westward toward designated Indian Territory in present-day Oklahoma, they faced extreme hardships, including exposure to harsh weather, disease, hunger, and exhaustion. The roads were long, often muddy and treacherous, stretching hundreds of miles across forests, rivers, and open plains. Families walked together, supporting one another through grief and fatigue, yet many succumbed to illness and exhaustion along the way. Military escorts, tasked with enforcing relocation, maintained strict schedules and orders, adding tension to an already desperate situation. Camps along the route became temporary shelters, where survivors tried to rest, repair clothing, and find small moments of respite, yet the relentless journey offered little comfort. Stories of loss, courage, and resilience emerged from each step, as communities attempted to preserve traditions, maintain social bonds, and endure the unrelenting march. The Trail of Tears was not only a physical journey but also a psychological and cultural ordeal, reflecting the profound suffering inflicted upon Native Americans, the displacement from familiar landscapes, and the struggle to survive under impossible circumstances. Each mile walked, each river crossed, and each night spent in temporary camp contributed to a continuous narrative of sorrow, endurance, and human resilience. The legacy of the Trail of Tears endures as a solemn reminder of injustice, the costs of expansion, and the strength of communities forced to carry their history and culture across unfamiliar lands, leaving an indelible mark on both the people and the story of the United States. Each day along the Trail of Tears was filled with immense struggle, as men, women, and children endured long marches under the weight of grief, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Families carried whatever belongings they could manage, while young children, the elderly, and the sick often fell behind, relying on the support of their communities to continue. Hunger was constant, with rations limited and food supplies irregular, forcing many to subsist on roots, wild plants, or meager provisions carried from home. Disease spread quickly through the tightly packed groups, with measles, dysentery, and smallpox claiming the lives of countless individuals, leaving behind sorrow, fear, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The weather added another layer of challenge: blistering heat in the open plains, freezing cold in winter months, sudden storms, and treacherous river crossings tested endurance and resolve at every step. Despite these hardships, communities sought to preserve a sense of social structure and cultural continuity, sharing stories, songs, and rituals that reminded them of home and identity. Leaders within each tribe worked tirelessly to organize camps, maintain morale, and encourage perseverance, even as grief and exhaustion threatened to overwhelm spirits. The physical and emotional toll was staggering, yet acts of courage, mutual support, and quiet resilience persisted, demonstrating the strength of human bonds in the face of unimaginable adversity. Every mile walked, each river crossed, and each night spent in temporary shelter contributed to a continuous narrative of survival, memory, and determination, as the displaced peoples carried their heritage forward despite the profound disruption of their lives. The Trail of Tears became a story of endurance as much as a story of sorrow, illustrating both the tragic consequences of forced removal and the quiet, remarkable capacity of communities to sustain themselves under relentless pressure. Even today, the echoes of this journey remain in the memory of descendants, in historical records, and in the landscape itself, a solemn testament to loss, resilience, and the enduring human spirit in the face of systemic injustice. After months of grueling travel, the displaced Native American tribes finally arrived in Indian Territory, a land unfamiliar and often challenging, yet a place where they could attempt to rebuild their communities. The journey had left deep scars, physically, emotionally, and culturally, but the survivors worked to restore daily life, construct homes, cultivate land, and preserve traditions that had been carried across hundreds of miles. Children learned to navigate new landscapes, elders shared stories to maintain heritage, and leaders organized settlements, schools, and governance structures to provide continuity and stability amidst profound loss. Despite the hardships endured, communities exhibited resilience, ingenuity, and a remarkable capacity to adapt, creating a foundation for future generations. Reflection upon the Trail of Tears reveals the stark realities of forced removal, broken treaties, loss of life, displacement, and the disruption of social and cultural networks, yet it also highlights human endurance, the preservation of identity, and the strength of communal bonds. The legacy of this dark chapter in American history serves as a solemn reminder of injustice, the consequences of policy driven by greed and expansion, and the courage required to survive under unimaginable adversity. Each story of loss, survival, and adaptation contributes to a continuous historical narrative, teaching lessons in empathy, resilience, and the enduring importance of remembering the past. The Trail of Tears, though born from tragedy, stands as a testament to the enduring spirit of the people who walked it, a quiet yet profound legacy of strength, cultural continuity, and the capacity of communities to persevere, rebuild, and honor their history despite the profound challenges they faced. In the mid-19th century, as the United States expanded westward, the need for faster, safer, and more efficient transportation across the continent became urgent. The idea of a transcontinental railroad, linking the eastern states to California and the Pacific coast, was ambitious and transformative, promising to connect people, goods, and ideas across thousands of miles. Construction began in the 1860s, with two primary companies, the Union Pacific starting from the east and the Central Pacific beginning from the west, working toward a meeting point near Promontory Summit in Utah. The project was a monumental engineering challenge, requiring careful planning, surveying, and coordination across mountains, deserts, rivers, and plains. Thousands of workers, including immigrants from Ireland, China, and Europe, as well as Civil War veterans, labored under extreme conditions, facing heat, cold, dangerous terrain, and the constant risk of injury. Every day involved physically demanding work, laying tracks, blasting tunnels through mountains, building bridges across rivers, and clearing obstacles that nature placed in their path. Camps along the route became temporary communities where workers ate, slept, and sought small moments of respite, sharing stories and building camaraderie in the face of relentless labor. The construction process was slow and methodical, requiring precision to ensure the tracks were safe, connected, and aligned across vast distances. Beyond the engineering challenges, the railroad represented a social and economic experiment, promising to reshape trade, migration, communication, and settlement patterns across the continent. As tracks gradually extended toward one another, the sense of purpose, hope, and ambition grew, driving workers to endure hardships and maintain progress despite fatigue, isolation, and the formidable obstacles of geography. The Transcontinental Railroad, once completed, would not only transform travel and commerce but also serve as a symbol of human ingenuity, perseverance, and the capacity to connect distant communities through careful planning, labor, and determination. Each mile of track laid, each bridge constructed, and each obstacle overcome contributed to a continuous narrative of ambition, collaboration, and endurance, reflecting the remarkable human effort required to link a nation coast to coast. Life along the construction lines of the Transcontinental Railroad was grueling, demanding, and filled with relentless challenges that tested the endurance of every worker. Laborers woke before dawn, carrying heavy tools, explosives, and materials as they advanced mile by mile, laying tracks through landscapes that were often harsh, remote, and unforgiving. In the Rocky Mountains and Sierra Nevada, crews faced steep slopes, unstable rock formations, and icy conditions, requiring careful blasting, tunneling, and bridging, while in the deserts of Nevada and Utah, scorching heat, scarce water, and dusty winds made even simple tasks exhausting. Workers lived in temporary camps, often crowded, with minimal shelter and sanitation, relying on shared meals, makeshift kitchens, and the camaraderie of colleagues to sustain morale. Immigrant laborers, particularly the Irish and Chinese, brought skill, discipline, and resilience, yet faced prejudice, harsh treatment, and the constant pressure to meet daily quotas, often under dangerous conditions. Every task, from digging to laying rail, required precision and coordination, as mistakes could result in accidents, derailments, or delays that affected the entire project. Beyond the physical labor, the crews had to navigate supply lines, unpredictable weather, and occasional conflicts with local communities or wildlife, demanding adaptability, patience, and constant vigilance. Despite these hardships, the work progressed steadily, fueled by the collective determination to connect the nation and achieve a feat of engineering unprecedented in scale. Each day, each mile of track, and each temporary camp contributed to a continuous narrative of perseverance, human ingenuity, and collaboration, as thousands of individuals, often anonymous in historical records, laid the literal and symbolic foundation for a railroad that would unite a continent. The Transcontinental Railroad became not only a marvel of engineering but a testament to the endurance, skill, and commitment of those who labored to overcome the obstacles of geography, weather, and human limitation, illustrating how steady, deliberate effort can transform both land and society. After years of relentless labor, the Transcontinental Railroad was finally completed in 1869, a moment that marked the unification of the eastern and western United States by rail. The final connection occurred at Promontory Summit, Utah, where workers, engineers, and dignitaries gathered to celebrate the joining of the Union Pacific and Central Pacific lines. The ceremonial driving of the golden spike symbolized more than a physical link. It represented the culmination of determination, ingenuity, and endurance by thousands of laborers who had worked under extreme conditions across vast and challenging landscapes. With the railroad complete, travel time between the coasts was reduced from months to mere days, transforming commerce, communication, migration, and daily life across the continent. Goods, resources, and people moved faster and more efficiently than ever before, enabling economic growth, settlement of new territories, and cultural exchange across regions previously separated by mountains, deserts, and plains. The railroad also accelerated westward expansion, connecting towns, cities, and industries, while shaping the social and economic fabric of the nation. Beyond practical impact, the Transcontinental Railroad became a symbol of human perseverance, engineering achievement, and the power of collaboration, reflecting the quiet heroism of laborers whose efforts made the dream a reality. Each mile of track, each bridge, each tunnel, and each day of toil contributed to a continuous historical narrative, illustrating the profound effect of determined collective effort on both society and geography. The story of the railroad endures as a testament to vision, patience, and endurance, offering lessons in planning, innovation, and the transformative potential of infrastructure. Even today, the Transcontinental Railroad remains a symbol of connection, ambition, and the quiet, cumulative work of countless individuals whose perseverance literally reshaped a continent, leaving an indelible legacy in the history of the United States. In 1862, during the midst of the Civil War, the United States government passed the Homestead Act, a law designed to encourage settlement and cultivation of the Western territories. The act offered 160 acres of public land to any adult citizen, or intended citizen, who was willing to live on and improve the land for a period of 5 years. For many families, immigrants, and pioneers, this represented an unprecedented opportunity to own land, build a home, and secure a future in a new, expansive frontier. The process required careful planning, resilience, and hard work, as settlers traveled long distances by wagon, train, or even on foot, often through difficult terrain, unpredictable weather, and unfamiliar landscapes. Upon arrival, they faced the daunting task of transforming raw prairie, forests, or desert into arable farmland. Life on the homestead was a rhythm of labor from sunrise to sunset, clearing land, building homes, planting crops, tending livestock, and preparing for the harsh realities of seasonal change. Isolation was a constant companion, as neighbors could be miles apart, and access to supplies, markets, or assistance was limited, forcing settlers to rely on ingenuity, perseverance, and mutual aid. Communities gradually formed as schools, churches, and trading posts emerged, providing social structure, shared knowledge, and support for those enduring the hardships of frontier life. The Homestead Act not only transformed individual lives but also reshaped the geography, economy, and social fabric of the western United States, encouraging migration, agricultural development, and the expansion of railroads and trade networks. Each day, each acre cultivated, and each home constructed contributed to a continuous narrative of human determination, adaptation, and the quiet, cumulative work of settlement. The story of the Homestead Act and westward expansion reflects both the opportunities and challenges of frontier life, illustrating how vision, labor, and endurance combine to turn vast, untamed lands into thriving communities, leaving an enduring imprint on the history and landscape of America. Life on the frontier under the Homestead Act was both challenging and transformative, demanding resilience, creativity, and unwavering determination from the settlers who chose to claim and cultivate new lands. From the moment families arrived at their homesteads, they faced the daunting task of converting untamed wilderness into productive farmland and livable homes. Trees had to be felled, rocks removed, and dense grasslands plowed, all using simple hand tools and the limited resources they could carry or acquire locally. Construction of homes required careful planning, as settlers built log cabins, sod houses, or rudimentary wooden structures that could withstand harsh winters, scorching summers, and sudden storms. Water sources were vital, yet often distant or unreliable, compelling settlers to dig wells, create irrigation channels, or transport water from streams for both household use and crops. Farming itself was a slow and uncertain process. Planting, tending, and harvesting required meticulous attention, and even small errors could mean the difference between food security and scarcity. Families rose early each morning to work long hours, balancing agricultural labor with household chores, animal care, and preparation for the changing seasons. Illness, injury, and accidents were constant threats, as medical care was minimal and access to assistance limited. Social isolation could weigh heavily, especially for women and children, but over time, settlers formed connections with neighbors, sharing labor, knowledge, and resources, creating a sense of community even in remote areas. Schools, churches, and small markets gradually emerged, offering education, spiritual support, and opportunities for trade, weaving together a social fabric that reinforced collaboration and mutual aid. The development of transportation routes, including dirt roads, wagon trails, and later rail connections, allowed settlers to move goods and communicate with larger towns, gradually linking isolated homesteads to broader networks of commerce and society. Each day, each act of labor, and each small success contributed to a continuous narrative of endurance, ingenuity, and the slow, deliberate process of nation-building. The experiences of these pioneers illustrate not only the physical and logistical challenges of frontier life but also the psychological and social resilience required to transform vast, untamed lands into thriving communities. The story of life under the Homestead Act reflects the enduring human drive to claim, cultivate, and inhabit new spaces, highlighting the subtle yet profound ways in which ordinary daily labor, perseverance, and cooperation shaped the expansion of the American West and left a lasting imprint on the landscape, culture, and history of the nation. Over the decades, the Homestead Act reshaped the American West, transforming vast stretches of wilderness into productive farmland, thriving towns, and interconnected communities. Thousands of families, immigrants, and individuals seized the opportunity to claim land, working tirelessly to cultivate crops, raise livestock, and establish homes that would endure for generations. While many faced hardships, failures, and loss, countless others succeeded in creating sustainable livelihoods, passing on farms to children, and contributing to the growth of small towns and local economies. The act encouraged settlement across remote areas, fostering the development of schools, churches, and civic institutions that anchored communities and provided social cohesion in regions that had once been sparsely populated. Railroads and trade networks expanded alongside these settlements, connecting homesteads to markets, enabling commerce, and accelerating migration and communication across the continent. The Homestead Act also had profound demographic and cultural effects, bringing together people of diverse backgrounds, traditions, and skills, who collectively shaped the social fabric of the West. Native American populations, however, experienced displacement, loss of land, and cultural disruption, a sobering reminder of the human cost of expansion and settlement. Despite these challenges, the enduring legacy of the Homestead Act lies in its demonstration of the transformative power of opportunity, labor, and perseverance, illustrating how determined individuals can shape landscapes, communities, and societies over time. Each farm established, each town developed, and each family story contributed to a continuous historical narrative of expansion, adaptation, and resilience, highlighting the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental, social, and cultural realities. The Homestead Act stands as a testament to the vision and determination of those who undertook the hard work of taming a frontier, creating the foundations of modern agricultural, economic, and social life in the American West, leaving an enduring imprint on the nation's history, identity, and understanding of human settlement. During the 19th century, the United States underwent a profound transformation as it shifted from an agrarian society to an industrialized nation, a process that reshaped daily life, work, and the landscape of the country. Factories, mills, and workshops began to appear in towns and cities, harnessing the power of steam engines, water wheels, and eventually electricity to increase production and efficiency. the textile industry, ironworks, and manufacturing of tools, machinery, and consumer goods grew rapidly, drawing labor from rural areas and immigrant populations seeking opportunity in the expanding economy. Life for workers was both promising and challenging, as long hours, low wages, and often unsafe working conditions contrasted with the potential for steady employment, skill development, and the chance to participate in a growing industrial economy. Cities expanded alongside factories, with streets, housing, and services emerging to support the influx of workers and their families. Immigrant communities played a crucial role in supplying labor, bringing skills, traditions, and cultural diversity, yet they also faced discrimination, language barriers, and difficult living conditions in crowded neighborhoods. Transportation innovations, including canals, railroads, and later telegraph lines, allowed goods, raw materials, and information to move rapidly, linking production centers to national and international markets. The rise of industrialization also altered social and economic structures, introducing new hierarchies of labor, management, and capital, while creating opportunities for entrepreneurship, innovation, and technological advancement. Workers, families, and communities adapted to these changes, learning new skills, establishing schools, and forming associations to support one another in an environment of rapid transformation. Each factory built, each mile of railroad laid, and each product manufactured contributed to a continuous narrative of growth, innovation, and human labor, illustrating how technological advancement and social adaptation intertwine to reshape the nation. The rise of industrialization in the 19th century reflects the dynamic interplay between human ambition, ingenuity, and the challenges of adaptation, leaving an enduring legacy on the economy, society, and daily life of the United States. Life in the rapidly expanding factories of 19th-century America was demanding, repetitive, and often perilous, reflecting the broader transformation of the nation from rural, agrarian communities to bustling urban centers of industry. Workers, including men, women, and even children, labored long hours, often 12 to 16 hours a day, performing tasks that required skill, strength, and constant attention, yet offered minimal safety or comfort. Machinery whirred, clanged, and roared, producing textiles, iron, machinery, and goods at speeds previously unimaginable, but the very machines that increased productivity also posed constant dangers, from entanglement to crushing injuries. The factory environment was loud, crowded, and poorly ventilated, and illnesses caused by dust, fibers, and chemical exposure were common, making every day a challenge to health and endurance. In urban areas surrounding factories, the influx of laborers led to rapid population growth, with streets, housing, and services struggling to keep pace. Tenement housing was often cramped and unsanitary, with entire families sharing small spaces, while water and sewage systems were rudimentary or non-existent, compounding public health challenges. Despite these hardships, communities developed resilience, establishing schools, churches, and social networks that offered support, cultural continuity, and opportunities for learning and social engagement. Immigrant communities, particularly from Ireland, Germany, and later Southern and Eastern Europe, played an essential role, bringing labor, skill, and cultural traditions, while simultaneously navigating discrimination, language barriers, and economic insecurity. The urban landscape was transformed, with factories, rail lines, ports, and warehouses dominating the horizon, symbolizing both opportunity and the relentless pace of industrial growth. Laborers adapted to this new rhythm of life, learning to balance the demands of work with family responsibilities, community life, and the maintenance of cultural traditions. Each day in the factory, each mile of rail laid, and each urban development contributed to a continuous narrative of adaptation, resilience, and human effort, illustrating the profound ways in which industrialization reshaped society, economy, and daily existence. The rise of industrial cities and factory life in the 19th century stands as a testament to both the ingenuity and endurance of the workforce, revealing how human labor, cooperation, and determination can transform not only landscapes and economies but also the fabric of social life itself. As industrialization progressed, the harsh realities of factory life, long hours, unsafe working conditions, and low wages sparked the growth of labor movements across the United States. Workers began to organize, forming unions, associations, and local committees to advocate for better conditions, fair pay, and reasonable hours. Strikes became a common, though often risky, method of protest, as men, women, and sometimes even children collectively refused work to demand improvements, challenging both factory owners and the prevailing social order. These efforts were met with resistance, as industrialists and government authorities frequently sought to suppress strikes, using legal measures, replacement labor, and, in some cases, force, highlighting the tension between labor and capital in a rapidly changing economy. Despite these obstacles, the persistence of organized labor gradually led to reforms, including regulations on working hours, the prohibition of child labor in certain industries, improved safety standards, and the establishment of frameworks for negotiation between workers and employers. The labor movements also fostered solidarity among diverse groups of workers, bridging language, cultural, and ethnic differences, as immigrants and native-born Americans learned to unite for shared goals and mutual support. Urban centers, already transformed by the presence of factories, became hubs for political activism, social reform, and the dissemination of ideas, as newspapers, community gatherings, and educational societies informed and mobilized workers. Each protest, each organized strike, and each campaign for reform contributed to a continuous historical narrative of struggle, resilience, and incremental progress, revealing the complex interplay between human labor, societal values, and economic development. These movements not only improved immediate working conditions but also laid the groundwork for labor laws, social justice initiatives, and the broader recognition of workers' rights, influencing subsequent generations and shaping the evolving social contract of industrial America. The story of labor activism during industrialization illustrates how collective effort, determination, and advocacy can transform both individual lives and national policies, leaving an enduring legacy of resilience, negotiation, and the pursuit of fairness amidst rapid economic and social change. Technological innovations during the 19th century profoundly shaped the pace, scale, and character of industrialization in the United States, transforming not only production but also society, economy, and daily life. Inventions such as the steam engine, mechanical looms, cotton gins, and later the telegraph and improved printing presses increased efficiency, expanded production capacity, and connected previously distant regions through communication and commerce. Railroads, canals, and improved roads allowed goods, raw materials, and people to move faster and more reliably than ever before, linking farms, factories, and cities into an integrated national economy. The mechanization of labor shifted work from small-scale, manual production to factory-based, systematized processes, while technological advances in energy, metallurgy, and machinery enabled the creation of entirely new industries, from steel production to textile manufacturing. The spread of transportation networks had far-reaching consequences, facilitating westward expansion, urbanization, and the growth of national and international markets, allowing businesses to distribute goods across the continent and beyond. Communities adapted to these changes, as towns and cities grew around factories, ports, and rail lines, creating new patterns of settlement, commerce, and cultural exchange. At the same time, technological change challenged traditional ways of life, as artisans, farmers, and small-scale craftsmen adjusted to a rapidly shifting economy and labor market. Each invention, each mile of track, and each industrial process contributed to a continuous narrative of human ingenuity, adaptation, and the transformative power of technology when combined with labor, capital, and vision. The cumulative effect of these innovations was a nation increasingly interconnected, productive, and complex, yet one that also faced new social, environmental, and economic challenges. Industrialization and its technological advancements reshaped the American landscape and identity, demonstrating how deliberate human creativity, perseverance, and adaptation could revolutionize society, create opportunity, and leave a lasting imprint on history. The story of this era reveals both the promise and the challenges of progress, illustrating the interplay between invention, human labor, and the evolving needs of a nation poised for unprecedented growth and transformation. By the late 19th century, the United States faced profound social, economic, and political challenges brought about by rapid industrialization, urbanization, and population growth. Cities swelled with new immigrants and rural migrants, factories expanded, and political corruption often accompanied the rapid pace of economic change. In response, a movement known as the Progressive Era emerged, characterized by widespread efforts to address social injustice, improve living conditions, and reform political and economic systems. Reformers sought to regulate industries, improve labor standards, provide education and public health services, and ensure fair governance, believing that deliberate action and civic responsibility could address the inequalities and excesses of industrial society. Progressive initiatives included the establishment of child labor laws, workplace safety regulations, sanitation improvements, and the expansion of public education, all aimed at improving the daily lives of ordinary citizens while fostering social cohesion and opportunity. Political reforms such as the direct election of senators, the introduction of initiatives, referendums, and recall procedures sought to give citizens greater control over government, counteracting corruption and special interests. Activists, journalists, and community leaders played crucial roles in exposing injustices, mobilizing public opinion, and advocating for legislative and institutional changes. Women's suffrage movements gained momentum during this era, emphasizing the importance of participation in civic life and the need for inclusive democracy, while social reformers worked to improve housing, food safety, and labor conditions in rapidly growing urban centers. Each reform, each campaign, and each policy change contributed to a continuous narrative of societal adaptation, resilience, and deliberate progress, reflecting the determination of individuals and communities to shape a fairer, healthier, and more accountable nation. The Progressive Era stands as a testament to the capacity of organized effort, civic engagement, and thoughtful reform to address systemic challenges, leaving an enduring impact on American governance, social welfare, and the broader trajectory of the nation. Daily life during the Progressive Era was marked by a growing awareness of social responsibility, activism, and the pursuit of practical solutions to the pressing problems of urbanization and industrial growth. Reformers, often educators, journalists, or civic leaders, worked tirelessly to improve living conditions in rapidly expanding cities, visiting tenements, schools, and factories to document overcrowding, poor sanitation, and unsafe working environments. Settlement houses, such as those founded by Jane Addams and other social pioneers, provided education, childcare, vocational training, and cultural programs, serving as hubs for community support and empowerment. Women's groups organized campaigns for labor rights, suffrage, and public health initiatives, mobilizing volunteers and engaging with local and national governments to influence policy. Investigative journalists, known as muckrakers, exposed corruption in politics, unsafe working conditions, and monopolistic practices, sparking public outrage and legislative action. Efforts to regulate food safety, public health, housing codes, and workplace conditions were often painstakingly slow, requiring research, advocacy, negotiation, and collaboration among diverse groups with sometimes competing interests. Each day of activism involved meticulous documentation, education, community organizing, and direct engagement with those affected, gradually building awareness, support, and change. Urban infrastructure, including water supply, sewage systems, public transportation, and schools, was gradually improved, reflecting the tangible outcomes of persistent reform efforts and civic commitment. The collective work of reformers and citizens created a continuous narrative of resilience, adaptation, and deliberate social progress, illustrating how sustained effort and thoughtful advocacy could address systemic challenges and improve the quality of life for ordinary people. The Progressive Era demonstrates the power of organized action, community involvement, and policy-driven reform to reshape society, leaving a lasting imprint on public governance, social welfare, and the ethical standards guiding American urban and industrial life. Each initiative, campaign, and improvement contributed to a larger historical narrative of incremental progress, revealing how ordinary people, through dedication and collaboration, could influence the trajectory of an entire nation. The Progressive Era witnessed a series of major legislative reforms that fundamentally reshaped the political, economic, and social landscape of the United States, reflecting the determination of reformers to create a fairer and more accountable society. Labor laws limited working hours, established safety standards, and prohibited child labor in many industries, directly improving conditions for millions of workers and setting precedents for future labor protections. Antitrust laws, including the Sherman Antitrust Act and subsequent legislation, aim to curb monopolistic practices, encourage competition, and protect consumers from the abuses of unchecked corporate power. Public health and safety reforms addressed contaminated food and water, unsafe housing, and disease prevention, establishing regulatory bodies such as the Food and Drug Administration to enforce standards and protect the public. Electoral and political reforms, including the direct election of senators, the introduction of initiatives, referendums, and recall procedures, expanded democratic participation and increased accountability, counteracting political corruption and special interest influence. Women's suffrage, culminating in the 19th Amendment, represented a landmark achievement, extending political rights to half the population and symbolizing broader social and cultural change. Education, social services, and settlement house programs laid the foundation for improved social mobility, literacy, and civic engagement, connecting individual improvement with national progress. Each legislative achievement and reform effort contributed to a continuous narrative of societal adaptation, illustrating the interplay between grassroots activism, policy innovation, and the persistent pursuit of justice. The lasting impact of the Progressive Era can be seen in modern labor protections, consumer safety standards, public health initiatives, democratic governance, and social programs that continue to influence daily life and policy. Beyond immediate reforms, the era demonstrated that deliberate, organized, and persistent civic action could shape national priorities, transform institutions, and leave a durable imprint on society. The Progressive Era thus serves as a testament to the power of collective effort, thoughtful legislation, and social responsibility, highlighting how sustained dedication to reform and public welfare can alter the course of history and create a more equitable, informed, and resilient nation. The Great Depression, beginning in 1929, was one of the most profound economic crises in the history of the United States, affecting millions of families, workers, and communities across the nation. Stock market crashes, bank failures, widespread unemployment, and the collapse of industries created a sense of uncertainty and despair as people struggled to secure food, shelter, and basic necessities. Families were forced to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances, with men, women, and children finding ways to survive through work, charity, and frugal management of limited resources. Breadlines, soup kitchens, and relief programs became common sights in cities and towns, illustrating both the severity of the crisis and the resilience of communities determined to help one another. Rural areas faced additional hardships, as drought, soil erosion, and falling crop prices compounded economic struggles, leading to migration, displacement, and the reshaping of farming communities. The psychological toll of the Great Depression was immense, with anxiety, stress, and uncertainty affecting daily life, yet it also fostered ingenuity, solidarity, and a sense of shared experience among those enduring hardship. In response to the crisis, President Franklin D. Roosevelt introduced the New Deal, a series of programs, policies, and reforms designed to provide relief, recovery, and reform to the American people and economy. The New Deal created jobs through public works projects, supported struggling farmers, stabilized banks, and introduced social safety nets that would shape the role of government in American life for generations. Each program, from the Civilian Conservation Corps to the Social Security Act, contributed to a continuous narrative of adaptation, resilience, and national renewal, illustrating how coordinated policy, collective effort, and civic leadership could address the most pressing challenges of the time. The Great Depression and the New Deal reveal the profound interplay between economic forces, human endurance, and the capacity of institutions to respond to crises, leaving a lasting legacy on the economic, social, and political landscape of the United States. During the Great Depression, daily life for millions of Americans was marked by scarcity, uncertainty, and relentless struggle, as families adapted to the harsh realities of economic collapse. Men and women searched tirelessly for employment, often taking on multiple low-paying or temporary jobs, while children contributed to household income or helped care for siblings, adjusting to a rhythm of life defined by survival rather than comfort. In cities, long bread lines and crowded soup kitchens became routine, providing essential sustenance and a place of shared endurance, while in rural areas, families faced failing crops, dust storms, and falling commodity prices, compelling many to abandon farms and migrate westward in search of opportunity. Communities demonstrated resilience, relying on mutual aid, informal networks, and local charities to share resources, support the sick and elderly, and maintain a sense of solidarity despite pervasive hardship. Makeshift homes, temporary shelters, and overcrowded boarding houses became living spaces for displaced families, as adaptation required both ingenuity and cooperation. Migration reshaped social landscapes, with entire towns experiencing an influx of newcomers seeking work or stability, while cultural exchange, shared experiences, and collective problem-solving fostered new forms of social cohesion. Families learned to economize, conserve, and innovate, turning scarcity into resourcefulness, while civic organizations and religious groups organized relief efforts, education programs, and community activities to sustain morale and provide practical assistance. Each day, each act of resilience, and each small victory in securing food, shelter, or employment contributed to a continuous narrative of endurance, adaptation, and human ingenuity under extraordinary circumstances. The Great Depression illustrates the profound challenges of economic upheaval, but it also reveals the capacity of individuals and communities to navigate adversity, sustain hope, and lay the groundwork for recovery, creating a story of shared experience, determination, and the enduring strength of human spirit that continues to resonate in the history of the United States. In response to the unprecedented economic hardship of the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal introduced a comprehensive series of programs and policies aimed at providing relief, recovery, and long-term reform, fundamentally reshaping the relationship between government and citizens. Agencies such as the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, and the Works Progress Administration, WPA, created employment opportunities, engaging millions of Americans in public works projects that improved infrastructure, preserved natural resources, and supported community development. The Social Security Act established a safety net for the elderly, disabled, and unemployed, marking a historic shift toward government responsibility for social welfare. Programs targeting farmers, such as the Agricultural Adjustment Act, sought to stabilize crop prices, provide financial support, and prevent further displacement, while initiatives like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, restored confidence in the banking system and safeguarded individual savings. Relief efforts were complemented by reforms in labor law, public housing, and education, each contributing to a continuous narrative of resilience, adaptation, and systematic intervention aimed at restoring economic stability. The New Deal also fostered civic engagement, as ordinary citizens participated in programs, committees, and local projects, reinforcing a sense of community and collective action during times of crisis. The long-term economic impact of the New Deal was profound, as it established mechanisms for managing financial crises, promoted employment, and provided social protections that continue to influence American policy and governance today. Each project completed, each policy enacted, and each community aided reflected a deliberate effort to address both immediate suffering and structural weaknesses in the economy, illustrating how coordinated government action, human labor, and social cooperation could transform adversity into opportunity. The story of the New Deal is not only one of policy and legislation but also a testament to the resilience, determination, and ingenuity of a nation confronting immense challenges, leaving an enduring legacy of social responsibility, economic reform, and hope that shaped the trajectory of American history. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, the nation underwent a massive transformation as everyday life shifted toward total mobilization in support of the war effort. Factories that once produced consumer goods were converted into centers of military production, manufacturing airplanes, ships, tanks, uniforms, and ammunition at an unprecedented scale. Cities and towns echoed with the steady rhythm of machinery, symbolizing a collective commitment to national defense and industrial efficiency. Millions of men joined the armed forces, leaving behind families, farms, and jobs, while women entered the workforce in record numbers, filling roles in factories, offices, and transportation systems. This period reshaped traditional social roles, as households adapted to new responsibilities and rhythms of daily life. Rationing became a routine part of existence, with families carefully managing limited supplies of food, fuel, rubber, and metal, learning to conserve, reuse, and share resources responsibly. Victory gardens appeared in backyards and community spaces, providing supplemental food and fostering a sense of participation and contribution to the national effort. Communities organized scrap drives, bond campaigns, and volunteer initiatives, reinforcing unity, cooperation, and shared purpose across neighborhoods and cities. Schools incorporated wartime lessons, newspapers carried updates from the front, and radio broadcasts connected citizens to global events, blending daily routine with awareness of distant battles and sacrifices. Despite anxiety, uncertainty, and separation from loved ones, the home front developed a quiet resilience, grounded in routine, discipline, and collective responsibility. Each factory shift completed, each ration carefully measured, and each letter exchanged between soldiers and families contributed to a continuous narrative of endurance, unity, and national commitment, illustrating how ordinary citizens adapted their daily lives to support an extraordinary global conflict. The mobilization of the home front stands as a testament to cooperation, organization, and the capacity of society to align individual effort with collective purpose during times of immense challenge and transformation. Daily life for civilians during World War II unfolded within a steady rhythm of duty, patience, and quiet determination, as families adjusted to the absence of loved ones serving overseas and the constant awareness of a world in conflict. Mornings often began with factory shifts, school routines, or household responsibilities, all shaped by rationing rules, transportation limitations, and the need to conserve resources. Mothers carefully planned meals using ration coupons, stretching ingredients creatively to ensure nutrition while maintaining a sense of normalcy at the dinner table. Children collected scrap metal, paper, and rubber, learning responsibility and national service through small daily actions that connected them to the broader war effort. Evenings were frequently spent listening to radio broadcasts, reading letters from soldiers, or gathering with neighbors for quiet conversation, reinforcing emotional connection and shared experience. Emotional endurance became a defining feature of the home front, as anxiety, hope, pride, and uncertainty coexisted in daily life. Families learned to cope with delayed communication, occasional bad news, and the constant anticipation of change, relying on routines, faith, and community support to maintain stability and morale. Women's expanded participation in the workforce reshaped social expectations, fostering independence, skill development, and long-term shifts in gender roles that extended beyond the war years. Cultural life adapted as well, with films, music, and literature reflecting themes of sacrifice, unity, and perseverance, offering comfort and distraction from wartime pressures. Neighborhoods organized volunteer programs, childcare exchanges, and community kitchens, reinforcing networks of cooperation and mutual aid. Each small act of discipline, patience, and kindness contributed to a continuous narrative of collective endurance, illustrating how ordinary citizens sustained emotional balance and social cohesion during prolonged uncertainty. The home front experience reveals the subtle strength of routine, cooperation, and shared responsibility, showing how society can remain resilient, adaptable, and compassionate even under the long shadow of global conflict. This period of civilian life during World War II left a lasting imprint on social structures, cultural identity, and the understanding of collective effort, demonstrating the quiet power of everyday perseverance in shaping historical outcomes. As World War II came to an end in 1945, the United States entered a period of transition marked by relief, reflection, and rapid transformation, as millions of soldiers returned home and communities adjusted to peacetime life. Factories that had produced military equipment shifted back to consumer goods, fueling a surge in manufacturing, employment, and household consumption. The economy expanded steadily, supported by government programs such as the GI Bill, which provided returning veterans with access to education, housing loans, and business opportunities, reshaping the social and economic landscape of the nation. Suburban neighborhoods grew as families sought stability, comfort, and a renewed sense of normalcy, while highways, schools, and commercial centers expanded to support population growth and mobility. Technological advancements developed during wartime found civilian applications, improving transportation, communication, healthcare, and household convenience, further accelerating modernization and economic prosperity. Social roles continued to evolve, as women balanced post-war expectations with newly gained skills and independence, influencing long-term shifts in workforce participation and family dynamics. Cultural life reflected optimism and ambition, with media, entertainment, and education emphasizing progress, innovation, and national confidence. At the same time, the post-war era revealed underlying challenges, including racial inequality, housing disparities, and geopolitical tensions that would shape future decades. Each returning family, each new home built, and each educational opportunity accessed contributed to a continuous narrative of recovery, growth, and adaptation, illustrating how societies transition from crisis to stability through coordinated effort, planning, and resilience. The post-war economic boom and social transformation left a lasting legacy on American identity, infrastructure, and expectations of prosperity, demonstrating the enduring impact of collective mobilization, policy support, and human aspiration in shaping national development and historical continuity. After the conclusion of World War II, the global balance of power shifted, and the United States entered a prolonged period of geopolitical tension known as the Cold War, defined by ideological rivalry, strategic competition, and cautious diplomacy between the United States and the Soviet Union. Rather than direct large-scale warfare, the conflict unfolded through political influence, military preparedness, technological development, and symbolic demonstrations of power, shaping international relations and domestic life for decades. Civil defense drills, public awareness campaigns, and media coverage brought global tensions into everyday routines, subtly influencing how families, schools, and communities perceived security, responsibility, and preparedness. At the same time, scientific and technological competition accelerated, as both nations invested heavily in research, engineering, and education to demonstrate leadership and innovation. The space race emerged as a visible and inspiring dimension of this rivalry, beginning with satellite launches and advancing toward human spaceflight, orbital missions, and lunar exploration. Rocket development, astronaut training, and space laboratories captured public imagination, blending scientific ambition with national pride and long-term strategic objectives. Schools emphasized mathematics and science education, while universities expanded research programs, shaping a generation of engineers, scientists, and innovators. Media broadcasts of launches, missions, and discoveries created shared moments of anticipation and reflection, connecting ordinary citizens to distant frontiers beyond Earth. Daily life continued with routines of work, family, and community, yet beneath this calm rhythm existed an awareness of global uncertainty balanced by optimism in technological progress. Each scientific breakthrough, each policy decision, and each educational investment contributed to a continuous narrative of innovation, vigilance, and aspiration, illustrating how competition, curiosity, and cooperation shaped a transformative era in modern history. The Cold War and space race together reflect the delicate balance between caution and creativity, revealing how humanity's drive to explore, understand, and advance can coexist with the complexities of global rivalry and long-term strategic thinking. Daily life during the Cold War unfolded with a quiet balance between routine normalcy and underlying global tension, as families continued their everyday activities while remaining subtly aware of international rivalry and the possibility of conflict. Schools regularly conducted civil defense drills, teaching children how to respond calmly to emergency signals, reinforcing discipline and preparedness as part of daily education. Families followed news broadcasts on radio and television, listening to updates about diplomatic negotiations, scientific achievements, and international developments, integrating global awareness into household conversations and routines. Neighborhoods participated in preparedness programs, maintaining emergency supplies and learning basic safety procedures, creating a sense of shared responsibility and collective vigilance. Nuclear anxiety, though rarely openly discussed, influenced cultural attitudes, architecture, and planning, with shelters, reinforced buildings, and public awareness campaigns becoming quiet symbols of caution and long-term preparedness. At the same time, optimism in science and education expanded, as schools emphasized mathematics, engineering, and scientific literacy, encouraging students to pursue careers that supported technological advancement and national innovation. Libraries, museums, and educational programs flourished, reflecting a cultural commitment to knowledge, research, and intellectual growth. Popular culture mirrored the era's themes, with films, literature, and music exploring ideas of space exploration, futuristic technology, heroism, and human resilience, offering both inspiration and subtle reflection on global uncertainty. Community life remained grounded in shared routines, local events, and social traditions, providing emotional stability and continuity amid larger geopolitical concerns. Each classroom lesson, each news broadcast, and each quiet act of preparedness contributed to a continuous narrative of adaptation, awareness, and measured optimism, illustrating how societies integrate caution with curiosity and progress. The Cold War civilian experience reveals the subtle psychological balance between security and aspiration, demonstrating how everyday life can remain steady and meaningful even when shaped by distant geopolitical forces and long-term uncertainty. The global focus gradually shifted toward the vast and silent expanse of space, where technological ambition transformed into a peaceful yet competitive pursuit known as the space race, an era defined by steady innovation, patient experimentation, and the quiet determination of scientists, engineers, and educators who worked behind laboratory doors and control rooms. Early satellite launches introduced humanity to the idea that machines could orbit the Earth endlessly, transmitting signals across continents and oceans, inspiring curiosity and confidence in scientific capability. Step by step, engineers refined rocket propulsion systems, guidance controls, and life support technologies, allowing longer missions and safer travel beyond the atmosphere. Each successful launch reinforced a sense of disciplined progress rather than dramatic urgency, emphasizing careful planning, systematic testing, and incremental learning. Astronaut training programs emphasized physical endurance, technical precision, and emotional stability, cultivating a culture of calm professionalism and teamwork. Public broadcasts of launches and landings became shared moments of collective attention, encouraging families to gather quietly around televisions and radios, observing controlled procedures and precise communication rather than spectacle. Educational institutions adapted curricula to support aerospace engineering, astronomy, physics, and mathematics, encouraging analytical thinking and long-term problem-solving skills among students. Libraries expanded scientific collections, research institutions increased funding, and international cooperation slowly emerged through shared data and peaceful exploration objectives. The moon landing symbolized not only technological achievement but also the culmination of disciplined patience, thousands of coordinated systems operating in harmony, and the careful management of risk over extended timelines. Satellites improved global communication, weather forecasting, navigation, and scientific observation, quietly enhancing everyday life without immediate attention or excitement. Long-term technological impacts extended into computing, materials science, medical monitoring, and environmental research, influencing industrial standards and academic research practices. The space race gradually evolved into sustained space exploration programs focused on research stations, Earth observation, and collaborative missions, reinforcing stability rather than confrontation. Over time, space technology became integrated into daily routines through telecommunications, transportation systems, and scientific infrastructure, shaping modern society in subtle yet persistent ways. The calm persistence of space exploration illustrates how human curiosity, when guided by discipline and cooperation, can generate lasting progress without disrupting the steady rhythm of everyday life. As the decades progressed, the intensity of global rivalry slowly softened, giving way to periods of diplomatic dialogue, cultural exchange, and cautious cooperation, allowing societies to transition from constant alertness toward a more balanced and reflective pace of living. International agreements on arms limitation encouraged stability, reducing immediate fear while reinforcing long-term strategic responsibility among nations. Scientific collaboration expanded across borders, with shared research initiatives in medicine, environmental science, and space exploration fostering mutual understanding and technical standardization. Cultural exchanges introduced music, literature, academic conferences, and artistic performances across international boundaries, encouraging appreciation for diverse traditions and perspectives while maintaining calm continuity in everyday life. Educational systems emphasized critical thinking, global awareness, and peaceful innovation, preparing future generations to approach complex challenges with patience rather than urgency. Urban development reflected stability through improved infrastructure, public transportation systems, community planning, and environmental conservation efforts, creating comfortable and predictable living environments. Media coverage gradually shifted from crisis-driven narratives toward analytical reporting, historical reflection, and long-form educational programming, offering audiences deeper understanding without emotional intensity. Households adopted emerging technologies such as personal computers, improved telecommunications, and energy-efficient appliances, quietly enhancing productivity and convenience while maintaining familiar routines. Work environments integrated automation and digital management systems, improving accuracy, safety, and efficiency across industries without dramatic disruption. Public health initiatives advanced steadily, improving sanitation, medical accessibility, and preventive care practices, contributing to longer life expectancy and stable community well-being. Social institutions strengthened civic participation through volunteerism, education programs, and local governance involvement, reinforcing trust and shared responsibility. Over time, the gradual normalization of international cooperation and technological maturity established a sense of measured confidence, demonstrating that long-term stability emerges through consistent dialogue, disciplined planning, and sustained mutual respect rather than rapid transformation. With the passage of time, the legacy of the Cold War quietly settled into academic study, public memory, and institutional learning, shaping how future generations interpret global cooperation, technological responsibility, and long-term strategic thinking. Universities expanded programs in international relations, political science, engineering ethics, and systems analysis, encouraging students to evaluate historical decisions with analytical calm rather than emotional judgment. Museums curated exhibits that documented technological milestones, diplomatic negotiations, and civilian life experiences, presenting historical continuity through carefully preserved artifacts and measured interpretation. Archival research initiatives digitize documents and recordings, allowing scholars to examine patterns of policy development, crisis management, and negotiation strategies with precision and patience. Public education programs emphasized balanced historical narratives, promoting critical reasoning and evidence-based understanding of complex geopolitical dynamics. Documentary filmmaking and long-form educational media adopted slow pacing, detailed narration, and reflective storytelling techniques, offering audiences quiet immersion into historical processes rather than sensational dramatization. Libraries expanded access to primary sources, academic journals, and curated collections, supporting lifelong learning and intellectual curiosity. Government institutions incorporated lessons from Cold War management into emergency planning, cybersecurity frameworks, and international diplomacy protocols, reinforcing resilience and procedural stability. Technological innovation continued to benefit from early research foundations established during the era, influencing computing architecture, aerospace engineering standards, medical imaging systems, and environmental monitoring technologies. Civic discourse matured toward thoughtful dialogue, emphasizing negotiation, transparency, and institutional accountability as cornerstones of governance. Collective memory gradually transformed anxiety into informed awareness, allowing societies to preserve caution while embracing steady progress and cooperative development. The enduring influence of the Cold War illustrates how prolonged periods of strategic tension can generate durable systems of knowledge, infrastructure, and disciplined governance that continue to support stability and structured growth across generations. As historical reflection deepened, attention gradually expanded beyond political structures and technological systems toward the subtle psychological and cultural rhythms that shaped everyday behavior, personal identity, and long-term social values across multiple generations. Families passed down stories of patience, preparedness, and disciplined decision-making, reinforcing habits of careful planning and emotional restraint in daily routines. Educational environments nurtured structured thinking, encouraging methodical problem-solving, delayed gratification, and respect for procedural systems rather than impulsive action. Workplace cultures emphasized reliability, documentation, quality control, and incremental improvement, embedding stability into organizational behavior and professional ethics. Architectural design reflected functional efficiency, safety standards, and long-term durability, creating living and working spaces optimized for consistency rather than rapid aesthetic change. Public communication systems favored clarity, repetition, and standardized messaging, promoting trust and predictability across institutions. Media consumption gradually shifted toward educational programming, historical analysis, and technical literacy content, encouraging reflective engagement rather than emotional stimulation. Cultural expression adopted subtle symbolism, minimalist design, and restrained narrative pacing, allowing audiences to process complex themes quietly and contemplatively. Personal routines stabilized around predictable schedules, community participation, and lifelong learning habits, reinforcing psychological comfort and continuity. Social relationships strengthened through reliability, mutual support, and shared responsibility, fostering calm interpersonal dynamics. Over time, these embedded cultural patterns contributed to resilient societies capable of managing uncertainty without destabilization, preserving continuity while allowing slow, deliberate adaptation to evolving global conditions. The Vietnam War, which spanned 2 decades, profoundly influenced both soldiers on distant battlefields and civilians at home, shaping daily life, culture, and social consciousness in the United States. News of the conflict reached living rooms through newspapers, radio, and television, bringing images of combat, hardship, and political debate into the calm routines of families, schools, and workplaces. Men and women across the nation faced the reality of military drafts, enlistment, and the absence of loved ones, requiring emotional endurance and careful adjustment of household responsibilities. Communities organized support networks, sending care packages, writing letters, and holding local events to maintain morale and connection with soldiers overseas. At the same time, a growing anti-war movement encouraged public discussion, protests, and civic engagement, challenging traditional authority while fostering dialogue about ethics, policy, and social responsibility. Colleges and universities became centers of debate, reflection, and activism, encouraging students to explore history, political theory, and moral philosophy alongside their daily studies. Music, literature, and art reflected both the anxiety and hope of the era, offering comfort, critique, and a sense of shared experience. Families adapted by creating routines of communication, maintaining local social connections, and finding stability through church, school, and neighborhood activities. The war's presence was subtle yet persistent in everyday life, influencing educational priorities, media consumption, and social attitudes while leaving a lasting imprint on national consciousness. Each letter sent, each conversation held, and each act of civic participation contributed to a continuous narrative of adaptation, resilience, and moral reflection, illustrating how ordinary citizens engaged with the complexities of distant conflict without allowing daily life to dissolve into chaos. The Vietnam War period underscores the delicate balance between global events and domestic stability, showing how communities navigate uncertainty, uphold shared values, and sustain continuity even amidst prolonged geopolitical tension. As the Vietnam War continued, a significant portion of the American population became increasingly vocal in expressing opposition, giving rise to a widespread anti-war movement that subtly reshaped daily life, public discourse, and cultural expression. College campuses, city streets, and community centers became arenas of reflection, debate, and peaceful protest, as students, intellectuals, and ordinary citizens gathered to voice concerns about military strategy, ethical considerations, and the human cost of conflict. Music and art emerged as powerful tools of communication, conveying messages of resistance, hope, and social critique through songs, murals, literature, and theatrical performances, quietly influencing attitudes while providing solace and shared identity. Newspapers, radio, and television carried images and narratives of both the battlefield and domestic activism, fostering awareness without overwhelming the routines of everyday life. Families engaged in conversations about morality, policy, and personal responsibility, balancing differing opinions while maintaining stability at home. Civil rights organizations, youth groups, and labor unions often collaborated with anti-war advocates, highlighting intersections between social justice, equality, and global responsibility. Public demonstrations, sit-ins, and teach-ins created a measured rhythm of civic engagement, encouraging reflection, dialogue, and participatory decision-making rather than immediate disruption. Cultural shifts during this period also influenced fashion, entertainment, and media consumption, as symbols of peace, unity, and individual expression became integrated into daily experience. Each letter written, song composed, and assembly organized contributed to a continuous narrative of civic responsibility, moral awareness, and social transformation, illustrating how ordinary people navigated complex political and ethical challenges while preserving the rhythms of everyday life. The anti-war movement and its associated cultural impact left a lasting legacy on American society, shaping attitudes toward governance, personal agency, and the power of collective action to influence national policy while reinforcing the importance of thoughtful, deliberate engagement with contemporary issues. During the mid-20th century, the United States experienced a profound wave of social change as the civil rights movement sought to challenge systemic racial inequality and secure equal rights for African Americans and other marginalized communities. Daily life for many citizens became intertwined with both the visible and subtle impacts of activism, legal battles, and cultural transformation. Families discussed issues of justice, equality, and civic responsibility around kitchen tables, preparing younger generations to understand both historical context and contemporary struggles. In cities, towns, and rural areas, peaceful marches, sit-ins, and boycotts created a rhythm of public engagement, blending organized protest with community solidarity, as participants coordinated schedules, transportation, and communication to maximize impact while maintaining safety and cohesion. Schools and universities became focal points for education, discussion, and activism, encouraging students to engage critically with history, law, and ethical decision-making, while also participating in demonstrations and civic campaigns that connected classroom learning to real-world experience. Churches and religious organizations often served as both moral guidance centers and logistical support networks, hosting meetings, fundraising efforts, and educational programs that nurtured leadership and collective action. Media coverage brought stories of protest, legislative progress, and local victories into homes, shaping public perception and reinforcing the idea that ordinary citizens could contribute meaningfully to societal transformation. Cultural expression, through music, literature, and art, reflected both the struggles and aspirations of the era, offering subtle yet persistent reinforcement of ideals such as dignity, perseverance, and nonviolent resistance. Each march organized, each petition circulated, and each conversation held within families or neighborhoods contributed to a continuous narrative of courage, resilience, and societal adaptation. The civil rights movement not only advanced legal and institutional reforms, such as the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, but also reshaped social consciousness, community engagement, and cultural understanding, illustrating how deliberate, coordinated, and peaceful action can gradually transform both public institutions and the daily rhythms of life in society. Grassroots activism formed the backbone of the civil rights movement, as ordinary citizens in towns and neighborhoods across the United States quietly and persistently organized, educated, and advocated for social change. Local leaders, teachers, students, and clergy coordinated voter registration drives, community meetings, and educational workshops, blending routine daily activities with the purposeful work of social transformation. Churches and community centers often doubled as organizing hubs, where families gathered to discuss strategy, plan marches, or offer mutual support, creating an environment where collective effort became part of daily rhythm. Social programs emerged to address immediate needs, providing literacy education, job training, childcare, and legal assistance, ensuring that the movement not only challenged institutional injustice but also strengthened community resilience and capacity. Cultural influence was evident in music, art, theater, and literature, which celebrated identity, resilience, and aspiration, offering inspiration while subtly educating audiences on equality, justice, and human dignity. Songs of hope and perseverance resonated quietly in homes and public spaces, while visual arts and theatrical performances reflected the lived experiences of those affected by segregation and discrimination. Children and young people, even when not directly participating in protests, absorbed lessons of civic responsibility, empathy, and leadership through observation, storytelling, and local engagement, ensuring that values of justice and equality became interwoven with everyday life. Each volunteer hour, every local program initiated, and each cultural creation contributed to a continuous narrative of empowerment, patience, and deliberate progress, demonstrating how persistent, community-centered action can gradually transform societal norms and institutional practices. The grassroots dimension of the civil rights movement reveals the subtle but enduring power of ordinary people acting together, showing that deep, long-lasting social change often emerges from quiet, sustained effort integrated seamlessly into daily routines, collective responsibility, and shared cultural consciousness. National legislative victories during the civil rights movement marked pivotal moments in the long struggle for equality, transforming legal frameworks, social norms, and daily life across the United States. Landmark laws such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, reshaping workplaces, schools, public accommodations, and government institutions, while the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ensured that African Americans and other marginalized groups could participate fully in democratic processes without systematic obstruction. These legislative achievements had subtle yet profound effects on everyday life, influencing hiring practices, school integration, neighborhood interactions, and civic engagement. Communities gradually adapted to new expectations of equality, as families, neighbors, and coworkers navigated changing social norms with patience, awareness, and mutual respect. Educational institutions reflected these changes by promoting inclusive curricula, equitable access, and opportunities for dialogue on history, ethics, and civic responsibility, allowing students to internalize the values of fairness and justice within their daily routines. Cultural expressions, through literature, film, music, and public art, continued to reinforce themes of resilience, dignity, and shared humanity, subtly shaping attitudes and expectations within households, neighborhoods, and workplaces. Social programs expanded, focusing on economic empowerment, literacy, healthcare, and community development, creating tangible improvements in living conditions while fostering a sense of collective purpose and inclusion. Each new policy implemented, each community initiative undertaken, and each personal commitment to equality contributed to a continuous narrative of societal adaptation, moral reflection, and deliberate progress. The civil rights movement's national victories and ongoing social impact illustrate how carefully constructed legal frameworks, combined with persistent grassroots effort, can gradually integrate principles of justice and fairness into the everyday rhythms of life, ensuring that historical struggles continue to influence contemporary society, guide civic responsibility, and shape the long-term cultural and ethical identity of a nation. During the latter part of the 20th century, the United States experienced profound technological innovation, economic shifts, and cultural transformation, quietly reshaping daily life, social patterns, and national identity. Personal computing began to enter homes, offices, and schools, gradually altering how people worked, communicated, and accessed information, while the expansion of telecommunications improved connectivity across cities, states, and continents. Industries adapted to automation, digital processing, and advanced manufacturing, influencing employment patterns, workplace culture, and economic productivity, as businesses balanced efficiency with human labor. Communities observed subtle changes in daily routines as people integrated new technologies into household management, professional work, and educational practices, slowly reshaping habits, expectations, and social interactions. Cultural transformation was evident through music, film, television, literature, and fashion, reflecting evolving social norms, aspirations, and identities, while providing a mirror to the experiences and challenges of contemporary life. Economic shifts, including periods of inflation, recessions, and recovery, prompted families to adjust spending, saving, and investment behaviors, cultivating resilience and long-term planning within households. Educational institutions embraced emerging fields such as computer science, environmental studies, and global economics, preparing students for participation in a rapidly modernizing society while embedding reflective thinking and problem-solving skills into daily learning. Public policy and social programs evolved to address new challenges, including technological regulation, workforce retraining, and access to education and healthcare, reinforcing the connection between governance and citizen well-being. Each technological adoption, cultural creation, and economic adjustment contributed to a continuous narrative of adaptation, innovation, and deliberate social evolution, illustrating how a society can integrate rapid progress into the familiar rhythms of daily life. The era of the late 20th century demonstrates that steady, incremental innovation, when coupled with education, policy support, and cultural reflection, can transform both individual experiences and collective identity, leaving enduring legacies in work, family life, and national development. As the Cold War gradually drew to a close, international relations shifted from ideological rivalry toward economic cooperation, diplomatic engagement, and cultural exchange, allowing societies to experience a calmer and more interconnected global environment. The easing of political tensions encouraged expanded trade networks, multinational business operations, and cross-border investment, integrating global markets into everyday consumer life through accessible goods, diverse cultural products, and evolving employment opportunities. Advances in communication technology, including satellite broadcasting, personal computing, and early internet development, enabled faster information exchange, international collaboration, and educational connectivity, subtly reshaping how individuals learned, worked, and communicated across distances. Families observed these changes through increased access to international media, global news coverage, and multicultural influences in food, fashion, and entertainment, enriching daily routines without disrupting familiar rhythms. Educational systems expanded international studies, language programs, and exchange opportunities, cultivating global awareness and intercultural competence among students while maintaining structured academic continuity. Work environments adopted digital tools, global supply coordination, and standardized management systems, improving efficiency, documentation, and reliability across industries. Urban development reflected international integration through improved transportation infrastructure, multicultural neighborhoods, and diverse commercial districts, enhancing social interaction and economic vitality. Cultural expression continued to evolve, blending local traditions with global influences in music, film, art, and literature, fostering creativity and cross-cultural appreciation. Public institutions strengthened regulatory frameworks to support international commerce, data management, and environmental responsibility, ensuring stability amid increased interconnectedness. Each technological upgrade, cross-border interaction, and cultural exchange contributed to a continuous narrative of gradual integration, measured optimism, and long-term cooperation, illustrating how the conclusion of prolonged geopolitical tension can generate sustained stability, innovation, and global engagement within the everyday rhythms of life. As the United States transitioned into the digital age, daily life became increasingly shaped by information technology, interconnected systems, and knowledge-based industries, while maintaining the steady rhythms of familiar routines and social structures. Personal computers, mobile communication, and expanding digital networks gradually simplified access to information, education, and professional collaboration, allowing individuals to manage tasks with greater efficiency and long-term organization rather than urgency. Work environments integrated data management, automation, and remote communication tools, enhancing accuracy, documentation, and operational continuity across sectors such as healthcare, education, finance, and manufacturing. Educational institutions embraced digital literacy, research platforms, and global collaboration opportunities, cultivating analytical thinking, adaptability, and lifelong learning habits among students. Communities experienced subtle transformation as online communication complemented traditional face-to-face interaction, preserving social connection while expanding reach and inclusivity. Cultural production adapted to digital platforms, allowing music, literature, film, and educational content to reach broader audiences while maintaining creative integrity and reflective pacing. Public policy frameworks evolved to address cybersecurity, privacy protection, infrastructure resilience, and digital accessibility, reinforcing stability and trust within expanding technological ecosystems. Environmental awareness increased through data-driven research, sustainable planning initiatives, and community education programs, integrating responsibility into everyday decision-making. Health systems adopted digital record-keeping, diagnostic technologies, and telecommunication services, improving continuity of care and long-term monitoring without disrupting patient comfort. Each innovation, institutional adaptation, and cultural shift contributed to a continuous narrative of disciplined progress, balanced growth, and thoughtful integration of technology into human life. The long arc of American history, from early settlement to digital society, demonstrates how steady adaptation, cooperative institutions, and informed citizenship can sustain social stability, innovation, and resilience across generations. This calm and reflective progression offers a reassuring outlook, reminding listeners that enduring development emerges through patience, learning, and responsible stewardship rather than speed or disruption, allowing the story of society to gently continue forward in quiet continuity. As the narrative gently settles into quiet continuity, the rhythm of daily life continues without urgency, guided by familiar routines, stable institutions, and the steady flow of time. Mornings unfold with predictable light, households move calmly through simple tasks, and communities function through small, dependable interactions that rarely draw attention yet sustain social balance. Streets carry the soft movement of people commuting, parks reflect slow seasonal change, and libraries remain silent centers of reflection and learning. Technology operates quietly in the background, supporting communication, transportation, healthcare, and education with reliable consistency rather than visible excitement. Generations pass knowledge forward through teaching, storytelling, and example, preserving lessons of patience, responsibility, and thoughtful planning. Economic systems maintain steady circulation, supporting livelihoods through structured processes and long-term stability. Cultural traditions remain alive through music, food, language, and shared memory, offering comfort and continuity across time. Environmental awareness gradually deepens as communities observe natural cycles, weather patterns, and sustainable practices with calm attentiveness. Public services operate through routine maintenance, careful regulation, and measured improvement, reinforcing trust and predictability. Even as innovation continues quietly, it integrates seamlessly into existing systems without disturbing the natural pace of life. Each day resembles the previous one in gentle familiarity, creating a comforting sense of repetition that supports rest, reflection, and mental ease. The story does not truly end but instead flows forward softly, like a steady river moving through familiar landscapes, allowing the listener to remain relaxed, grounded, and undisturbed as time continues its calm passage. As the story gently comes to a quiet pause, allow your thoughts to soften and your breathing to remain slow and natural. There is nothing more you need to follow, nothing more you need to hold on to, only the calm rhythm of rest continuing peacefully. The day has faded, the mind has grown still, and the body can remain comfortably relaxed. Let the silence between the words feel warm and steady, like a soft night breeze moving through a quiet space. If you are already drifting into sleep, allow yourself to remain there without effort or awareness. If you are still awake, simply rest quietly and enjoy the calm stillness that surrounds you. Thank you for sharing this peaceful time and allowing this gentle story to accompany your night. May your rest remain deep, steady, and undisturbed. Good night, and rest well. If you find this calm storytelling helpful for rest and relaxation, you are gently welcome to support the channel with a quiet like, a simple comment, and a soft subscription, helping this peaceful space continue to grow and reach more listeners who enjoy slow and relaxing history. Thank you for your kind support. Good night, and rest well.